Now, my next guest probably has some thoughts on this. Please welcome to the show, Dan Geltrude, America's accountant. He likes numbers. Dan, those numbers don't add up.
They certainly don't, Scott. And let's break them down a little bit. It seems to me that you have a lot of people out there that are kind of living like the federal government. What do I mean by that? Well, year over year, you have tax revenues that have been going up. Not last year, but before that, right? Yet the government collecting more money, yet we go further into debt. Why? Because of spending. Now, let's take that example and take it to what's going on with people in this country. Yes, their income may be up, but you know what? Their spending is up. Their spending is up much more. And the reason for that is that they are also increasing their personal debt, which is why we have credit card debt over $1 trillion right now. So when you start to look at what's happening at that real level of what I would call what's the everyday American doing, if they're making more, they're spending even more. Bad formula, Scott.
Okay, now I might write an op-ed about this tonight if I have the energy, but this is what I've been feeling. You know, we've got a lot of asset classes on all-time record highs are doing very, very well. Most of them are. It's almost like it's too easy. You know what I'm saying? But then on the other hand, on the other side of that ledger, in your accountant parlance, you know what? We've also got credit card debt all-time record highs, auto loan delinquencies record highs, mortgage foreclosures record. I mean, there are a ton of bad news things also on record highs. Those two things can't exist for any length of time. Something's got to give, baby. What do you think it's going to be?
Well, you know, Scott, here's the thing. No one actually knows. Everybody's been talking about what happens when. What happens when the national debt gets so big we start to default on payments. Again, no one knows what that's going to look like. And I'm going to play accountant for a second here. So when you have your balance sheet, and on one side you have your assets, and the other side you have your liabilities, and your assets keep going up, but your liabilities keep going up. What's happening here is everybody's just focusing in on the asset side in terms of why are the assets where they are? Well, it's being driven by what's going on with the liabilities, meaning it's debt fueled. And as far as the stock market goes, they are banking, quote unquote, on this interest rate cut. Now, that may happen, Scott. The question is, should it happen? And I'm in the camp to say, no, it shouldn't happen.
I agree with you. And we've had folks on the channel here on our show that say that they also agree with us, but they think that they'll try to sneak in a one cut just because of the election year or try to appease the administration. I mean, I don't know about that. I don't like to think that it's going to be political that way. I think Jay Powell has proven himself to be political because of some of the things he said to get his job or be reinstated. However, I think that if you've got house prices up 6.5% year over year, I get it. There's a lot of, there's not a lot of stock out there. But what are you going to do to this economy when you've got a lot of inflation indicators still flashing red? Look at crude oil today. If you want to start cutting rates, even one or two times, that's going to make your problem a lot worse. What do you think?
Well, yeah, because think about it. An interest rate cut, what does that do? That encourages people to borrow more. Why? Because debt is cheaper. So you keep the cycle going here, Scott. Look, the Fed has been focused solely on reducing demand, right? And the way they've approached that is, well, if we can get interest rates high enough, we could tamp down demand. It actually hasn't worked. The answer is, which has nothing to do with the Fed, is to focus in on the supply side, which means you need more supply chain choices. And we're not going in that direction.
And at the same time, they're not getting any help from Congress because Congress keeps spending and spending and spending. So they're on this doom loop themselves. And to kind of bring this around to the full circle from what you just started off talking about is there could be a time where we don't default, Dan, but we do see that the dollars we're paying back our investors with are worth a lot less than the ones that they bought our debt with, correct?
Yes, and what happens if when we get to that point, Scott, you want to talk about inflation.
Ooh.
That's a hyperinflation scenario because dollars are not going to be worth anything because we're going to be printing it to pay off debt.
Well, we're already there, and Mike Lee was on the show last Thursday, and he said we're at that inflection point where we're starting to print money to pay off interest. And once you start going down that rabbit hole, that's doom loop, and it's really, really hard to pull out of it. And I think you'd agree with that. Thank you very much for coming on. You're the perfect guy, an accountant, to have that